fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
This is worse for your health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and many of us, if not most of us, will experience this at some point. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, Like Diamonds, back again, Salt Strong Unchurched. This is a wild one, and I've got a couple of stories associated with this, and I'll start with the one I was meeting with my friend Brad, and Brad here in town here in Winter Haven, Florida, runs a really cool nonprofit that is all about just elevating our town and our community. That means getting people off the streets, helping people get jobs, helping people who just came out of jail get jobs, trying to combat homelessness. Even the amount of children who are homeless in our town is staggering. And Winter Haven's not a big place. I mean, 40, 50,000 people. And it's amazing that there are hundreds of kids who are homeless, living in and out of cars and maybe a hotel room here and there, and sometimes underneath a bridge. I mean, it is absolutely staggering. So their whole mission, and we donate both in time and money to them every year, is to fix a lot of that. Obviously, it's tough to get it perfect, but just attacking one person at a time, one family at a time, getting them back on their feet. Because, when you have people who are employed and part of a community and going to local churches and going to local restaurants, I mean, it lifts everyone up. It's a rising tide lifts all boats. And so I was having breakfast with him, and he said, Joe, do you know what one of the bigger issues that we're seeing here in town is? And I said, I just guessed homelessness. He says, no, that's one that we're always kind of fighting. But he's like, there's a new one, or a newer one, that is really rearing its ugly head and having a massive impact. And I said, well, what is it? He said one word. He goes, loneliness. And I was like, loneliness? He's like, yeah. He's like, loneliness. He started telling me some of the stats, and I'm going to read some of these off to you, that loneliness is likely to increase your risk of death by 26%. Loneliness, which means living alone and in poor social connections, are as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness is worse for you than obesity. It's better to be obese than to be lonely. Loneliness and social isolation are associated with an increased risk of developing coronary heart disease and stroke. Loneliness increases the risk of high blood pressure. Loneliness with severe depression is associated with early mortality, and loneliness is a risk factor for depression. Golly, this is horrible, right? And then loneliness and social isolation put individuals at a much higher risk of dementia. Now, here is what is wild. We're talking about millions of people now fall into this loneliness, meaning they're living at home. And this was really, really wild. 500,000 older people go at least 5 or 6 days a week without seeing or speaking to anyone at all. I'm going to repeat that. 500,000 older people go at least 5 or 6 days a week. There's only 7 days in the week, guys, right? 5 or 6 days a week. Let's just say 80 or 90% without seeing or speaking to anyone at all. Wow. And we went on to talk about that. It's like, well, tell me what you're seeing like in our community. She's like, well, you have a lot of older people who either have lost their spouse or got divorced and never got remarried. And all of a sudden, their children are now too busy. And, back in the days, children usually didn't go that far. When they started a family, a lot of times, they came back and lived near their parents. And now that's not as trendy, if you will, as it used to be, right? Now it's almost rare to find a married couple at 75 years old and all of their kids and all their grandkids are there, within 30 minutes or an hour of them. It's very rare to see that, right? So now it's just the opposite, where you have a lot of divorced, parents who maybe not get remarried, or the spouse has passed away, and the kids and grandkids live further away. And even if they were only 30 or 40 minutes away, or even 10 minutes away, right, we're busier than ever with sports and all the different things that just seem to consume our lives. I mean, I know I live like 1.2 miles from my parents. And, we still don't see them every single week. There's some weeks where we see them, 4 times a week, but don't see them every week. Fortunately, they're still married and have each other, and have my brother, Dan the man, living there. And they're constantly doing stuff, mostly because of this, right? I mean, loneliness is not fun, but absolutely wild. And so he says, what we're seeing is all of these older people who don't have a spouse, their kids aren't coming to visit them anymore. The grandkids aren't, maybe, once a month if they're lucky, or every other week. And they're literally just sitting at home. And it got even worse with COVID, right? Because now, the older population was at the higher risk of possibly dying from this or having severe issues. And so they went out even less and interacted even less than before, which is just so sad. He's like, so loneliness is at this all-time high, and we're seeing some massive, massive issues with depression and dementia, the stuff I just mentioned there. And he says, make it even worse. Now you've got, these communities, meaning neighborhoods, where people don't even know their neighbors anymore, right? We're all so busy. I remember when I bought my very first house, it was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was a young buck, and like all the neighbors came over like purposefully with little gifts. I remember I didn't expect it. I didn't know what happened when you bought your first home. And every one of my neighbors, the one from across the street, the one catty corner, the one both next door, like directly, they all came over in those first few days and introduced themselves and brought a little welcome gift. And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. And I knew all my neighbors. And when I had, a party, or if I needed help, I had all their phone numbers and I could call them. I knew them by name. I'd wave to them. And now, fast forward, not that many years in the big scheme of things, we're talking just 25 years from when I bought my first house. And now, we live in neighborhoods where many people don't even know their next door neighbors, right? Many people not to say they're rude or not waving to people, but can you name both neighbors on both sides of you or across the street? Can you name the neighbors the next row over, right? It's wild that I asked this to quite a few people here over the past week, and most people I asked could not. They could name at least one, if not two, of their next door neighbors, but couldn't go much further than that. Like, yeah, I know what they do. Like a lot of times they had an idea about the person, but like, yeah, honestly, I've never really met him or spoke to him. I don't even know their first name or last name. I was like, man, that is so sad. So after kind of hearing about this the very first time, we had a neighbor before we moved into this new house who was an older lady who moved literally right next door, like across the street from us. And I didn't know her whole story until a little bit later on, but I just went out and purposefully just introduced myself and told her about, my wife and the kids. It was just me at the time. And she's like, oh, you could tell it just made her day that I even came over there and said something. And as time went on, I noticed that she was usually there alone. Occasionally she'd get in her car and drive somewhere. But for the most part, she stayed inside and watched TV and played on the internet, read books. I'm not really sure, but I was always shocked that I knew she had some kids that they just rarely came over, and when they did, it was just kind of brief on a weekend, and then they were gone. And come to find out, one time I just ran into her walking outside and said hi and started up a conversation. Found out that her husband had passed away in an accident, and she never got married again, and did say that she had been quite lonely. And so I just kind of made a point after that, just even having the kids go over there and just ask if they could help out, having the kids, Shauna, go over there and show off her pets and stuff. And this older woman really kind of became our friend. We were almost like kids and grandkids to her. And a really funny story. So I work from home a lot of the time, and if not, I'm either on a boat fishing and filming, or in the office. And occasionally I'll let my hair grow a little bit longer. And it was the middle of the day on a Tuesday, and I had been fishing, and so I had my fishing clothes on. I looked like just a mess in terms of like my hair and stuff had been blown in the wind. It looked like a bum probably. And she happened to be outside. So it's the middle of the day. I'm back home, and she's kind of looking at me, and she kind of like signaled me over across the street. So I walk across the street, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And she goes, "Hey, is everything okay?" And when someone asks you that, you start like self-doubting yourself, like, "Man, what am I? Do I look horrible? Am I pale? What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think." What do you mean? And she's like, I don't know. You've been on my mind. I've watched you here all the time at home, and I have to." And this is her talking to me. She goes, I'm maybe I'm pushing my limits here and being nosy, but I have to assume that you don't have a job, that you're unemployed. I start dying laughing. So she's like, I have to assume that you're unemployed and don't have a job, because I just always see you around the house, and you're never dressed up. You always got flip flops on and board shorts. So I just start dying laughing, and I tell her I never told her what I did, and I was like, actually, I'm the CEO of an online fishing club called Salt Strong, and tell her all the stuff that we do, and she started laughing. She's like, "Oh my gosh," she's like, "Joe, I have been praying for you, and that you're going to be able to get a job." Get a job. So no, I'm just telling you that because we ended up hitting it off, and I got to know her more and more every time I spoke to her. But never would I have considered her like, to be like a best friend. It's not someone that we had over, to our house for dinner. It was just someone that we just chatted with politely, as neighbors normally do, right? This was just a normal neighbor, neighborly love, nothing else. We never had her, shame on us, maybe we should have, but this was not someone I would consider like a great friend. Although we truly did love her, and I'm so glad that we formed the relationship with her. But where I'm going with this is the power of just being nice to people, and just how lonely people are. So we find this new house. I've done a whole podcast on this new house that we found, which is only a mile or two away. So it's very, very close. And I start telling some of the neighbors who were close, like that we had dinner with and were really close because they had kids our age. And those are the people that we, for the most part, had over for dinner and did some fun things with on the weekends. And that was really tough, telling all of them that we're leaving and it didn't even think about our next door neighbor, the older woman across the street. And so she hears about that we're moving, obviously saw the for sale sign and all that. And she came up to us. And she is like got tears in her eyes, and she's like, "You guys have meant so much to me over this past year. I just can't tell you what it's meant to be able to know you guys. You treated me like family." Like, just went on and on. She starts crying. I'm crying. Like, it was so emotional. It was like, whoa. I got after that experience, like after this, moment, and she just hugged us like to the point she wouldn't let go, and it was just like she was losing a loved one. And I was like, wow, just from us, for the most part, just being nice, like old school, normal neighbors, just waving to people. And every once in a while, like, this is not someone we talk to every day. This was just normal. Hey, how's it going? Sometimes when it's trash day and we're both, across the street from each other, maybe having a quick conversation. She finally, asked me if I'm unemployed, right? I mean, that's how little she even knew about me. And yet we were one of the few people in the entire neighborhood that just gave her any time and attention at all. So that is my call to action for you. There are millions of people just like her in America right now who are not seeing anyone for 5 or 6 days out of the week, not of the year, of the week, right? I would start getting a little bit depressed if I went 5 or 6 days in a month without seeing or interacting with anyone, right? Think about how much our relationships and talking to people, I mean, can you imagine? And yet there's going to be, especially as we have more and more boomers getting older, and then their parents, who many of them are still alive and single and widowed. So many of these older people, particularly, are going through life without much interaction and without even just that kind neighbor. So the call to action is, regardless of what your neighborhood looks like, or if you live on a massive piece of property, you have some neighbor or someone that you can just be nice to. I'll tell you something funny that I've done. Just trying to put a smile on people's face is just randomly waving at people as I drive by them, just completely random. And it's wild. Like I'll do it well in advance, so they know I'm waving. I'm not like, trying to be a jerk, and they don't think that it's something else. And I'm just a big smile on my face, and you see them through the windshield light up. They're like, and sometimes you're curious, like, do I know this person? But everyone loves a wave, right? It's simple things like that. But with your neighbors, just as simple as, and you know what, if you're feeling guilty right now, like I certainly was when I was talking to my buddy Brad, because I didn't know our next door neighbor's name, one of them. And I was like, man, so guess what? I went up to him and I was like, guys, I want to apologize. We've been neighbors for almost a year. I don't even know your names, and I want to know you. And I'm telling you, that relationship completely changed. There's nothing, they're just as embarrassed as me, right? This is not like you're not going to be a worse person for doing this. The longer it goes, the more awkward it is. So just do it. You be the first person. It's even worse if they come to you first. So be the person that goes out there. I'm looking like the hero. I'm like, oh man, that was so cool that he came up and said hi. Right. And prior to that, they probably thought we were jerks, just like we kind of thought, oh man, they don't ever say hi or talk to anyone. And it was almost because it was awkward. We'd been so long without actually getting to know each other's first names. We know who we were. We know what they look like, and ditto, but we never really had talked to them before. And I said it changed the whole relationship. And even here in our new house, that was one of the first things I did. I'm gonna meet our neighbors, and I went up and just started meeting them. I went out of my way, if they were anywhere in the yard, to go up to them and say hello, to introduce myself, to tell them about my family and learn all about theirs and how many kids they had and grandkids and all that great stuff. And I'm telling you, it changed everything. Like when this hurricane came, man, I had neighbors who knew us and liked us and were coming out willing to help. And it would have been just the opposite if we were all just recluses and never said hi to anyone. So that's my challenge to you today, especially if you have someone older in your community, whether it's your next door neighbor or just someone that you see around town. Go out of your way just to say hi to them. You will be shocked that it might literally make their entire month. Something as small as that. I had no idea the impact we had on this lady next door. No idea. I never would have guessed in a million years that we meant that much to her until I started realizing how powerful it is just giving someone a little bit of attention and love, and even just a little bit of your time. It can go so far. And this is going to be something that will continue to come up if we don't nip it in the bud. And the good news is it doesn't take billions of dollars to fix. This is not like a cancer pandemic or anything, right? This is something as simple as a little of our time and just getting to know your next door neighbor. It's something we can all do. It costs no money, and we can literally start doing it today. That's what I love about solutions that are like this, that don't take like, oh, we got to go raise $1 billion and fix this, the hard way. This is such an easy one to fix, and it literally could save someone's life. I mean, you think about that this loneliness pandemic is worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, is worse than being obese. That says a lot right there. And this is from real studies, from real doctors, not just someone's quick opinion. So, and I'll put a link to all the notes on that, or you can just Google it yourself and just talk about, what are the stats on loneliness in America. So that is it, guys. Value and cherish your relationships, build your relationships, grow your relationships, grow more relationships, and put a little bit of time, especially into the older generation. You can learn so much from them. They have so much to give back. And ultimately, it's what we're called to do, right? Is make sure we're taking care of both younger and older generations. and to love our neighbors as ourselves goes right back to the Bible. So appreciate you guys, love you guys, and I will talk to you on the next episode.
'Cause fishing